is your purpose here? How many of you are there?
Welcome to Voyage of the Geek for a brand new show. We're looking at a new film this time around. Joining me as always, Rick Legato, Tom McGill, Dan Miller. My name's Dave Scotland. And this time around we're looking at a classic 1959 Journey to the Centre of the Earth. A film that has been remade more times than Tom's had hot breakfast. And so, gentlemen, let's start off with, what's your connection to this film? Like, when did you come across it? When was the first or last time you saw it? Let's start with you, Rick.
It's kind of one of those childhood favourites, I think. You used to watch it in the middle of the day on TV on a Sunday. And actually, just before we chose to do this film, I'd actually watched it on Fox Classics.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Recent, off your own bat?
Yeah, off round back.
Nice. And you watched all the way through?
All the way through.
That's a telling sign. What about you, Tom?
Yeah, I don't remember when I first saw it. I do remember seeing it as a kid. And I was always a big fan of Jules Verne's books.
Have you read the book?
Oh, yeah, several times.
Oh, wow.
Recently, yesterday.
Oh.
So I read it twice in my long years, and then I just read it again because I thought might be interesting to see the differences.
Yeah,
That's called preparation.
Yeah, it's going above and beyond. What about you, Dan?
Saturday morning movies, I think, just like Rick. I'm sure I know I first saw it as a kid in the lounge room at Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon or Sunday, something like that. One of those TV movie shows. So, yeah.
Yeah. So the way the show works is, and the new format of the show is that we pick a film or something to review, and we do it over 3 episodes. And today is episode 1 of our journey into the journey to the centre of the Earth. And what we're going to do is hand it over to Dan with his segment, Wot the Plot.
All right. So we're just going to talk about briefly a bit of a synopsis of what the actual story is about and what the plot is actually about. It's written by Jules Verne. It's written in, I think, 1865, which is when the American Civil War was happening. And it's an exploration story. And there was a lot of that going on, people going off to the Arctic and people climbing up mountains and all sorts of things and going into Africa and all sorts of things. So it's all of the rage, very topical sort of a story to have. And I think Jules Verne's book is just lots of stories, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. They're all these kind of exploration type stories.
And that
Journey
was
to the Moon.
That was his speciality, what they call journey adventures.
Yeah. So in this one, I don't know, it's kind of what it says on the tin, they're going to go into the centre of the Earth. I think it was partially related to some stories that were around at the time that there might be a sort of nobody knew what was inside the Earth. So Jules Verne is kind of making up what he thinks might be inside the Earth.
There was a theory by Edmund Halley that the Earth was made out of interior concentric rotating spheres, which he derived because of different compass readings that he saw while he was traveling. He saw the way he explained it was, well, if the Earth had interior spheres that were rotating, that would explain the deviation of the compass. Mm-hmm. And then there were people who actually jumped onto that bandwagon, and Congress almost paid for an expedition to the North Pole to find the entry.
Yeah, well, this is very close to that story, right? So they're up in Iceland. The heroes are all up in Iceland. They're scientific explorers. The heroes are up in Iceland. They're going to go in a cave that kind of goes all the way down to the center of the Earth. They have a kind of an adventure down there, and then they escape with their lives. So it's a sort of an adventure story, overcoming troubles and hostility, sort of hostile world and other forces. And we've got a couple of characters. We've got kind of the scientist character and a band of companions. I don't know. That's a pretty quick synopsis of the story.
So is it science fiction? It's sort of based on science.
I think it's definitely science fiction.
It's science fiction of the era. They actually called Jules Verne the father of science fiction.
Without the gadgets and things like that we associate with science fiction, it is based on science, which is normally the prerequisite for...
Jules Verne's books always play in contemporary times. They always play in the actual now time, but they're always fantastical journeys into the, somebody has built a submarine or somebody build a big cannon that will now fly to the moon, but they're never in the future.
They've got all sorts of techno equipment. They've got lights with batteries that they go down with. What else have they got? They've got some echolocation device.
Do we have a name for that? What an awesome piece of kit that is.
It's like the sonic screwdriver version, Jules' version of the sonic.
It takes the last echo it hears and it extrapolates the direction it came from.
It points you to that.
That's awesome.
Anyway, so there's
the most important thing is that they have enough food to last them for months and months in the tiny little backpacks.
Yeah, the story is like an expedition, right? It's not like they're just going to pop down. It's like...
And there's nothing to hunt.
It takes months or something.
There's no animals to hunt or anything. They have to take all the food for a journey of unknown length.
And all the underpants. In fact, I think there's a lot of Australians that can take a leaf out of their book, because here we are, 14 days possibly isolation, and we're getting a truckload of toilet paper to survive. These buggers go down for almost a year, just a little backpack. I think there's a lesson there for us all.
Rick's obviously talking about the famous toilet paper rush of 2020, thanks to the coronavirus, or at least in Australia. I don't know. Is it happening all over the world?
It's happening in Germany as well.
Nightmare. For no reason at all.
Soap and toilet paper.
You know the Fires Near Me app, which tells you if there's fire. My dad sent me a fake app, which was toilet paper near me.
Yeah, nice.
Locates the closest toilet paper.
I like that.
Cool. All right. So that's kind of a bit of an overview. So why don't we go through it and just have a bit of a discussion about in a little bit more detail and some of the cool things. So what I've done here is I've also boiled down the story into 2 log lines that I wrote. One's two from different angles. So a log line, for those who don't know, is essentially trying to encapsulate the entire story, the whole thing in one sentence. So here's my log line. Number 1, when a noble but crotchety scientist discovers a volcanic artifact, he must overcome disreputable scientists and underground peril to be the first to spelunk to the center of the earth.
Sounds good.
Yeah, that's accurate.
And then the second one I wrote, which is a slightly different angle, but the same idea. A group of intrepid explorers must race to the center of the earth to escape and then escape alive whilst nefarious scientists and prehistoric monsters snap at their heels.
A little bit more enticing.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I would put the monsters into the logline as if they were an integral part of the film.
Prehistoric monsters.
They were certainly
sort of also rans.
You could tell that they were very important to the marketing mechanism for the film. And some of the other films of the journey to the center of the earth cashed in a lot more on the monsters. I think there was one that had a very large monkey in it. You couldn't call it a great ape. Wasn't really in the same caliber as King Kong, but it was a giant monkey.
Did the book have actual dinosaurs in there, Tom?
It did. Well, it had Mosasaurus and Plesiosaurus in there. It didn't have a Dimetrodon, but none of those are dinosaurs. Okay.
So this is its science sort of background that I think Jules Verne was trying to incorporate the latest things that have been found, dinosaurs that have been found, would have been in some museum or something. Somebody would have been able to check out.
The logline should introduce us to the main character.
Oh, I did say crotchety scientist and intrepid explorers.
So there's a big deviation here from the film and the book, because in the book, it's the boy. It's his perspective.
It's
all from the boys.
Narrating, isn't he?
He's narrating the book, and it's his journey, and there's all these Freudian undertones of him growing up to be a man by entering the womb and then being ejaculated out again at the end from the volcano in a spew of lava and making that journey from boy to man.
Right.
Yeah, actually, one of the writers, I'll save it, but does make a comment about that.
Yeah.
The Freudian aspect.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's introduce maybe the characters. So the first character, the main character, is Sir Oliver Lindenbrook, who's played by
You got to roll the R. Brook. Lindenbrook.
played by James Mason.
Because they're from
They're from Scotland.
the Edinburgh University.
That's right.
And so about 5 times throughout the film, you will hear a Scottish accent in there.
Yeah.
The one woman at the end, she really leans into it.
So Lindenbrook is he's a crotchety old scientist he's a bit of a nerd scientist, right? He's really so into his science stuff that he kind of doesn't get along with people very well.
Yep.
Do we still have crotchety science characters? I was thinking about Doctor Who, the very first Doctor Who, William Hartnell. He's one of those. He's this crotchety old grandpa scientist character.
Yeah.
I don't think we have them. Is Tony Stark a crotchety old scientist? He's not old, right?
He's not old,
cool.
but he's crotchety.
He's still a bit crotchety,
definitely.
but he's cool. You know.
Oh, Ant-Man. The
The old guy.
The old guy, the-
Hank.
Hank Pym.
Q.
He's definitely crotchety and old. And yeah, Q from the James Bond series is definitely crotchety.
And actually, even the new young Q is probably the crotchetiest. of
yeah,
them
yeah.
all.
The old guy that was Q for years and
Desmond
years,
Llewellyn.
who nearly rode himself off at very high speeds in a very expensive sports car at the age of 80.
Oh shit!
Just
As you do.
wrapped it around a tree or something. I think it was a Bugatti or a Lamborghini or something like that. But he was very crotchety. Yeah, absolutely. Didn't want James to play with any of his toys.
So alongside him, he's got his offsider, which is Pat Boone, who's a singer.
Alec McEwen.
Alec McEwen.
McKeon.
So Alec's purpose in the world, in terms of this movie, is to,
Sing a song.
apart from sing a song, yes, he does croon out a song for us.
Well, it's Pat Boone.
Pat
That's
Boone.
in his
That's his shit.
contract.
They cut
his
some
wheelhouse.
other songs out of the film. He had more coming.
Oh, was there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
They
that was
didn't cut enough of them out.
Yeah, I think that was part of the deal that enticed him to do the movie. He was like, well, "I'm not doing it unless I can sing some."
At least it wasn't a musical. as
Yes.
in-
It started.
but there wasn't music that was coming up from somewhere.
There was a trajectory.
There was always either some instrument or there was something. Do you know
Some
what I mean?
reason, it's a good excuse, rather than I'm just
rather than
happy.
just break into song with full orchestra in the background.
As you do when you're in the middle of the earth.
Yeah. But it's a sign of the times for that period of cinema, isn't it? Coming from the stage vaudeville type influences, and also the way it was shot as well is very front on.
Everybody stands in a line.
Yeah, it's really like a stage play with a camera in front of it.
Well, cameras are pretty big, heavy things. You can't just like whip them around and zip around. So you have to sort of stick it somewhere, and everybody has to stand in front quietly. So Alec McEwen, his job is to point at things and say, what in the world is that, Professor? And Professor says, well, Alex, that's kryptonite. It's a rock that comes out of a... So it shows off how smart the professor is.
It goes back the other
What
way.
does kryptonite
I don't
come
know.
out of, Dan?
It comes out of that rock.
It's fossil kryptonite. It comes out of a volcano's bottom.
They seem to work back the other way too, don't they? Where he'll be asked, the professor will be asked a question, but then he yields to his young student.
You should know.
Answer this for the good sir or for the madam or something like that. There's a lot of toff in this film, isn't there?
And it's also narratively, it's his job to kind of help the hopeless professor with the human aspect.
Yeah. Be a human and stop being a crotchety nerd.
Yeah. And there are times in the film where he plays the damsel as well. He gets lost. He sort of they drop everything to go hunting for him and looking for him and whatever. So he's a little bit of the wet blanket in the film now and then. But he also is the muscle now and then.
He's
as
also
well.
the one who draws the female audience to the cinemas
Absolutely.
by getting his shirt off every opportunity he gets.
Absolutely.
Well, he spends
Well,
half-
there's double because we might as well go
We
on.
get Hans, yes.
Because we've got Hans who has his shirt off more than on.
Yes. There's Hans there who doesn't speak English, which makes for a dynamic in the narrative itself. The fact that their main guy. He's the muscle. He's the mountaineer. He's the local.
The outdoorsman.
Can't speak English. So a lot of the
He's just there to do stuff.
A lot of the plot turning points and stuff are through the translation.
Yes.
A lot of the what's the professor thinking is brought to the fore by getting it translated.
Yeah,
to
you can
him.
explain it to the audience. It's a good mechanism
It's
for
a good mechanism.
Exposition.
Yeah.
So yeah, Hans is a guy that they pick up. So he's part of the team. He seems to do a lot of stuff on his own. It's like, we're all over here, we're doing something, we're trying to start fire. And it's like, where's Hans? He's over there making a small fortress. What's going on?
That's right.
Yeah. So then we've also got the other part of the team, which is Carla Gutenberg. Gutenberg. And she's like the foil. She's the opposite. She's the opposite of Lindenbrook.
She's
They don't like each other.
Got more emotion, and famously, apparently,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't like each other in real life either. Those two actors.
Okay.
But she was anything but the soft female that we've seen in some of these sci-fi films. She stood her ground.
Yeah. I'll be talking about that in my segment.
Yeah, I thought she was pretty good. She held the. In fact, it was the men that were put in their place for their attitudes towards women by her and the way she conducted herself. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah. So, she was the kind of resistance to Lindenbrook. So that kind of made up the little cast. These are our expedition crew. There's like 4 of them.
And she also translates for Hans.
So there's this kind of Hans is off on a separate group, and the only communication is through Carla, right?
Yep.
But there's one more member of the team who
My
we're
favourite.
forgetting.
Oh, Gertrude.
The award-winning Gertrude.
The award-winning?
Actually, did she?
Tom will get to this later. I have no
Excellent.
doubt. It's award-winning duck.
So there was a duck in the story. Hans has a duck.
And she's actually more self-sufficient than many of the humans.
And I think in other
Finds the way.
iterations of this, other films, it's more of a hero of the story, finding the way out and things like that more often.
So in the book, there was no ducks, right?
No.
Oh, no ducks in the book.
No.
No ducks in
No
the book.
animals of any
Is
kind.
this film the first time we see the duck?
This is a non-canonical duck.
Well, so is the widow. She's also not in the book. And so is the Saknussum. There's nobody. The book is just 3 guys.
Okay.
Okay.
And Hans is one of the guys?
Yeah, the professor, Otto
the boy,
Lindenbrook,
the
Axel, and Hans. Hans, those 3 go in the earth, and they do not have adversaries following them with guns and anything. That was all invented for the film.
Okay.
I think those are good steps forward, actually.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay, so that's most of the cast, but there are some other people who are involved. There's some other minor characters, but there's some other important characters, and they're all scientists. This film has how many scientists in it? Count off the top of your head. Quickly.
Well, let's count. Hans is not one, and the duck is not one.
We're going to
and
try and
there's
reverse.
You mean in the entire film?
Yes, how many scientists are there?
The professor's youthful ward, Baker, Diane Baker.
No.
She is not a scientist. So I'm counting the not scientists.
Oh,
because
the
there's
non-scientists.
3. And that makes it easier.
By
Okay,
reverse,
yes,
you can
yes.
count the non-scientists.
Yes.
There's an
Everyone
awful
but
lot of
3.
scientists in there.
Yeah. There's a coachman, sidekick, thug, henchman.
Okay,
Does a bit of murdering on the side.
That's a minor character.
Okay.
That's a minor character.
Right.
But I think we've got 4 main frontline scientists in here.
Yep.
And they range from jerks through to noble heroes. All right. So we might just quickly go through and just discuss a couple of, like, break it down into acts, Act 1, 2, and 3. Then I just want to do a couple of other little minor things. So Act 1, I think is a good way to break down the story. Act 1, we get to know everybody, basically, is what happens in Act 1. And we set up the inciting incident, and basically that's what Act 1 does, and it kicks us off and gets the story rolling and gets it all moving. So we meet all of our characters. Lindenbrook is just received his knighthood. So he receives medals and he's a big hero. And as soon as he goes into class, because he's a professor, all his class just stand up and
Break into song.
serenade him with a gigantic song that they all know. the school song or something or other.
Yep.
And we investigate a couple of other characters, and then we hit the inciting incident. So, what's the inciting incident, Tom?
Professor gets a rock.
Professor gets a rock.
Yep.
And what does he get the rock? Who gives him the rock, and why?
Well, that's the one of his students who in the book. There's again confusions in the book. Alec McKeown or whatever his name is. He is
McEwen.
he's just a student. He's just a friend of the family and a current student of the professor's
Yep.
who collected some money for the knighthood present. There was some leftover money, and for the leftover money, he bought him a rock because the rock was geologically of interest.
Yep.
Was should be a very light lava, and it was very, very heavy, and so that was
It's
obviously
very
something
suspicious.
inside, and that's of geological interest. So he gave it to
Well,
him.
much like the Back to the Future series, there's a inappropriate relationship going on between a young boy and a much older.
Is it inappropriate though?
Well, I don't know what's going on. There were certainly some loving gazes early on between the two, and he was invited over for dinner. A little bit inappropriate, I would have thought, in a teacher-student relationship.
But he
you
used to
you
come
guys
to
are
the
in the
house-
education field. Is that inappropriate?
No, yes.
No,
I,
he used
I
to come
generally
to the
don't do
house
that.
all the time.
Little bit of
though.
tension.
They expose that when he
A bit of
meets
tension in the air.
when he meets Diane. He what was her name in the film? Jenny.
Yes.
Jenny.
Jenny,
yes.
who is the niece of the professor.
Yes.
Yes.
Again, in the book, the boy is the nephew of the professor, whereas the girl is just the
Oh,
youthful
okay.
ward that the professor has taken in to look after.
Gotcha.
Here, it's again a role reversal in the film. But she explains that Alec used to visit all the time, so they're childhood friends. So he's been known to the family, and I think it's in that situation, it's fine.
Semi-appropriate.
Semi-appropriate.
Still gifts being given though.
Well, he wants to be ingratiating himself. He wants to marry the guy's
buying
niece.
favour, things
Yeah.
like that.
He wants to ingratiate.
So yes, the turning point
himself.
is receiving that the lava.
Finding it
specimen.
interesting. Yeah.
So it's very suspicious lava. It's supposed to be light, but it's actually very heavy. So this
right.
has everybody, the professor, super intrigued, and so he's going to burn the lava off the rock to see what's inside.
That's right.
And he puts it in the oven, and it
His
explodes.
moronic assistant
Yes.
Moronic assistant
Yes.
blows it up.
puts too much petrol in or whatever, and kablooey.
Just fills the lab with shrapnel.
Yes.
I like how concerned the professor was of his niece. Fuck,
Who ended up on the table?
blew across the room, and all he cared about was what was inside of the rock. Went for that with a glove. Didn't care about the niece.
And so we find something interesting inside the rock. It's a metal object and it has writing on it.
Yes,
It looks like it's a plumb bob.
plumb ball.
Plum bomb.
Yep.
Yeah, that you hang to. So it's a tool. It's an instrument.
Yep.
And for some reason, it's inside this lava, and it's got writing on it, and he recognizes the writing, essentially, because he can recognize it's the signature, and it's a signature from a guy called Arnold. What's his name? Arnie.
Is it Arno?
Snacknussen.
Is it Arno?
Arno.
Arne Sagnussen.
Arne
Sagnussen.
Snacknussen. And he also clicks in his mind that Arne Sagnussen was the guy who was going to the center of the earth, and because this is
A century ago.
a century ago, and because this is his, it must have come out of a volcano, and he must have gone to the center of the earth, and therefore we should go too.
Yep.
Well, yeah, the thing.
It had a tantalizing clue on it that you go to a certain place on a certain day and the way will be shown.
That's right.
So of course you have to go. Like you can't not go.
Okay.
I'd go.
I'd go. At least to find out what was happening on that day. It might not go down in the volcano.
Well, that's definitely what the professor thought. But his professor bosses later on tried to discourage him from that. Say, are you crazy?
Yes, they wanted his services a little bit more. You could tell that they had a vested interest in him teaching.
Yes.
Of course they do. Now they have to hire someone else.
They have
There's
to
the
hire
budget.
That's right.
The
Yeah,
uni-
they get a tutor.
We don't have
in.
money for that in the budget. But he, in the true toff professor way, he's completely blinded by any practical
Yes,
requirements of him.
Are you crazy? This is
Just
the
sees this narrow thing that he has
awesome
to
find
do.
of the century.
Get out, woman! I didn't ask for tea. It reminded me of the Sherlock Holmes scenes with the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes, where she keeps trying to come in with food, and he's abusing her and telling her to get out, whatever, and all these people are just trying to look after him while he's obsessed on something.
So they ask him to, get some confirmation. He tries to get some confirmation, tries to get a bit more information, but no more information kind of comes.
Well, importantly, he writes to a colleague, doesn't he?
That's right. He writes
Professor
to
Göteborg of Stockholm.
Yes, Professor Gutenberg.
The leading,
Which turns out to be a big mistake.
Remember, we've got 4 scientists coming up. We've got to get through. So, so Professor Gutenberg is the second one.
Yep.
So he writes off, but Gutenberg doesn't reply. Little do we know that Professor Gutenberg is up to no good.
he gets a reply that Gutenberg's gone missing.
Ah, that's right. Yes, Gutenberg's gone missing. He's scarpered. So that spurs him on to think, well, perhaps we should get to this crater and check it out quick smart.
Yep.
And that fires us off into Act 2.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is where all of the sort of confrontations and the overcoming of difficulties start to happen. And the first confrontation and overcoming of difficulties is with humans. And we also meet a few more characters. We meet the rest of the team there.
Is it so? Are we already in Reykjavik,
Reykjavik,
which is the capital of
Iceland.
Iceland? Is that
Yes.
so? We're there. We're on location now. We're
Yep.
okay. Yep.
And what does he do? He goes up to the crater where the way will be shown, and
The Snæfellsjökull.
this, what is it?
The Snæfellsjökull is the
What did you call me?
extinct volcano.
It's the distant cousin of Snuffleupagus.
Yes, that's what you get when you have the coronavirus. But they come back. Why did they come back? Why did they go down?
Oh, just checking it out.
Well, they found
getting the lay of the land.
They found it had been recently surveyed, so they saw the surveyor poles, the stakes in the ground,
Okay.
and he knew that there was something afoot.
Some other people had been there.
Someone had been there.
And then they were also trying to buy spades and shovels and ropes. And in all of Reykjavik, there wasn't a single spade, shovel, rope, tin of beans.
Someone had bought them all up.
So, yep, no more theodolites. Had all been purchased. Yeah. What else happens?
Well, they get abducted.
Well, yes, one at a time. Alec gets sent off by the good doctor while he continues his observation at the volcano. Alec is sent to go and buy supplies.
Yep.
And then when the good doctor comes down and jumps in the carriage,
There's a scruffy taxi driver.
he's told to take it easy because of his delicate instruments and samples. And
This
then
is in the
proceeds
horse-drawn taxi, right?
proceeds to fly off down the track and
Flies through the Arizona desert.
Yeah.
By the looks of
it did
of
look
the
like it in the
footage.
background, didn't it? With the good doctor bouncing around in the background in various escalating stages of annoyance in the toffee way. Good sir.
You'll break my theodolite. Meanwhile, he had like
This is not a suggestion.
Meanwhile, he had like a spear in the thing, with a spear with a big hook,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Poke him, poke him."
And so they pull up at a duck downery. Yes.
Well, he doesn't know. He gets out of the
I think there's a
carriage,
big
and
sign on the side that says
and he's
duck
really
downery.
pissed off
Because
he
he's-
says,
Kidnapped.
This is not the
Yeah.
hotel.
"Yes, I'll have you thrashed, man."
And then he gets knocked out
Yeah, then whack.
and gets thrown down a chute into a duck down storage cellar.
Yes, so a giant pile of feathers.
And then he finds Alec, who also at some point got knocked out and thrown down the same chute.
Yes. All right. So that then brings up our new character who we're going to meet,
Gertrude,
Gertrude.
who's tapping Morse code. I think that whole scene where they're trying to work out what language it is, like it's Morse code, and they're saying, I think it's Russian.
yeah.
It's Morse code. What do you mean?
Yeah, it's Russian Morse code.
Fucking letters.
Yes. Yes. SOS da niet whatever. So anyway, they hear this tapping, but it's we can see that it's Gertrude the duck is just
On the
tapping,
other side,
and
yes.
they're trying to escape, and they think it's another prisoner, and it's not another prisoner. It's just a duck, Gertrude,
That's right.
who's tapping, having a lovely time, and then eventually they meet up with Hans,
Who lets him out?
who lets them out.
and then proceeds to
follow them around
follow
wherever they
them
go.
Just hang
everywhere.
around.
Everywhere.
She just walks with them.
Just refuses to leave
The
at any
moment-
point after that.
The moment they go to a hotel room door that's locked, he just goes, here's my knife. I will open this door.
And no one ever says, "Are you busy? Like,
Yeah.
Do you want to come with us?"
And when they look for him, he's kind of off, doing something on his own. He's,
Immediately takes to them and
And he's very handy. He breaks into doors. He's
Does
very,
everything.
very handy. Does everything.
Yep.
Yep.
I suspect Gertrude is actually calling the shots, and those bits were edited out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I reckon she's
He's listened to
boss.
Gertrude. Yes, Gertrude. Yes. Yes.
No,
Take them out into the desert.
They suspect nothing.
So eventually they kind of bust into Professor Gutenberg. So this is
That's right.
This is the guy that our professor wrote to.
Who went missing.
Who went missing. Mm-hmm. They find that he's in the hotel room. They bust into his hotel room.
He's got all the kitty.
That's where all the tins of beans are. He's got all the tins of beans and all the spades and all the shovels
And toilet paper.
and all the toilet paper.
Yeah.
He's got enough to. And then when they're rummaging around the room, not only does he have everything in there, he's also in there.
That's right. And it's the introduction. Probably not the first time it happened in the film, but it certainly was the first standout. This film had a lot of those. Ignore the obvious thing in front of me. Let me step over here. And then,
Wait, what in the world is that?
And so this one was the dead guy. Like he lifts the blanket up, puts the blanket down, goes to look, and then walks back and in horror. That shit was going on all the way through this film, and the timing of it just never seemed quite right. But yes, they found a dead, laid out Professor Gutenberg in the room.
Mm-hmm. And immediately, the professor does a little bit of Sherlock Holmesery. What's this in his beard? And they scrape out his beard. Oh, poison.
he sees some white crystal.
Yes.
And he says, that's potassium
cyanide.
By looking at it. Yeah.
Might I interject and travel into the future now and say that Bloody Alec is in the cave lost by himself in the salt field? He's just surrounded by white crystals.
Yeah.
And he immediately, what's the first thing he does with it? He sticks it in his mouth.
Yeah.
By the fistful too.
The last crystal he saw was potassium cyanide.
Well, he's a professor's student. He's not the professor's best student.
No, obviously not.
Not long for this world, possibly. So of our four scientists, that's one down.
Yep.
So that's Professor Gutenberg. But Professor Gutenberg's there with his wife,
That's right.
Carla Gutenberg.
She was due to meet with him.
Gutenberg.
Gutenberg.
So she turns up
Gutenberg.
at the hotel.
And, we got some bad news.
Yeah.
He's bereft of life.
Yes, he's dead. Dead Jim.
He's fucking snuffed it.
It is a can of beans.
Ex-scientist.
So,
After reading some transcripts, she decides to give all the kit to the good doctor.
His diary, which
That's right.
the doctor has written in English, much to the viewer's pleasure.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Stroke
He's
of
from
luck.
Stockholm, but
Literacy levels for the subtitles in 1959 might have been problematic.
Yeah.
So this other professor had got word from our professor, Lindenbrook, and had gone for a bit of a scout around, and he was trying to sort of steal the victory. So essentially our professor, Lindenbrook, wants to now take all of his stuff, take all of his shovels and stuff, and so he has a chat with Carla Gutenberg, and she wants to come along. She says, "Okay, I'll give you all my stuff."
That's the deal. If you want all the gear, you've got to take me with you.
So James Mason is like, "No, that's awesome." And then she says, "But I'll have to come along." And she says, "No, can't come along. You're a woman."
There's a really cool micro acting moment there where she starts to say it and he says, "Don't say it." You could almost hear him say, "Oh, you said it."
So she eventually convinces him.
Yep.
And
So that's the crew.
That's
so we
the
now
crew.
have assembled the A team.
We have the A team. So they go back up to the mountain, and now they're going to go down.
Well, they've got to wait for the sign.
True.
Remember,
They
they're there
go
for
up
a
to the
very
mountain.
specific day.
Yeah.
The last day of May, is it?
Last day of May.
The last day of May.
And the way will be shown.
Okay, so last day of May, the sun will be in the right position and the way will be shown. And exactly at the right time and the right place, the sun kind of peeks through a crack or a hole in another mountain somewhere else. Thank you, Tom.
That's important.
And a beam of light
Shines at the opening
shines at the opening inside this gigantic crater.
where Saknussemm.
Just put me in charge of all the names.
entered.
That's my contribution to
I'll
the
just
show.
point. I'm just going to point at Tom.
Where Saknussemm has gone down.
All right,
So,
we're away.
but we got to have an important stop off here. Where was this? Where did this scene appear again?
Where was that scene?
That scene
Well, it's-
where he holds up the thing and
Well,
the
you could tell that
beam of
Spielberg
light.
certainly had a likening to the movie.
Yeah.
So
It was
That's
the
Indiana
Tannis.
Jones.
Yeah, it's the Tannis map scene in Indiana Jones. The whole setup
it's
for
the
where to
same-
dig.
Yeah, it's the same thing, right? So yeah, Indiana Jones probably. I mean, Steven Spielberg, 8 years old or something or other, still remembered that when he making his movie. Okay, cool. So what happens now? They're going to go into the cave, and they kind of go into the cave.
Yep.
But we also see the antagonists at this point.
That's right. Remember, we've got 4 scientists. We've lost one. We've got our hero one, so we can bring forth. We can play our next scientist
Yes,
card.
a descendant of Orne is
He's a count.
Count Saknussemm,
So
And he's offsider, thug, murderer.
murderer,
yeah.
cowboy. Yes,
so
and they're quietly following behind. They're hiding.
we have to remember. We have to remind the audience of how this works. That Saknussemm, the
Saknussemm.
elder.
What do you call
What's
me?
his name? Saknussemm.
It's different every time.
Saknuts.
Professor Saknut.
Keep you guessing.
Professor Nutsack has gone down to the bottom of the world.
Yes.
Professor Nutsack, the older.
Yes.
The elder, the original,
The old school. The
has gone
OG.
down to the bottom of the world
Nutsack OG.
where he never came back. But he did get that nutsack busy because he has a son or a grandson.
Well, he was also busy during this journey. It's worth mentioning that he leaves 3 notches along the path.
He does a Hansel and Gretel
Breadcrumbs.
thing.
He must have done that
thing.
journey a few times to know exactly which.
That's
is
what
the
I would have
right-
thought as well.
Yeah.
He's leaving the notches and then he keeps going.
Going
and
back to.
How do you know? So you got to go that way a day and then come all the way back and go, yes, go this way.
He has to find the center first before he can come back and backtrace and everything. Do the notches, and then crawl back down again to die.
That's
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
Can't be logical.
Break his leg.
That's how he works. But he has now got a son. Now his son,
Descendant.
descendant. Sorry, yes, his
There's
descendant.
100 years has gone
Later.
past. So
300 years in the book. So
I think I may have said 300. So he's definitely a long way down the
Yeah.
the hierarchy.
And so he's been lurking around.
killing
being
Göteborg with
Yes.
potassium cyanide.
Killing
Which is really
Göteborg.
odd because the characters, our main heroes now know that there's somebody.
Yes.
They have heard of Count Saknussemm.
Yeah.
Yet they just throw that, be that as it may, and then they go on the journey and never expect anything.
I think that's that English, British sort of tough
And
mentality.
even when the widow says, "Oh, I think we're being followed," the main guy goes, "Nah,
Yeah.
shut up, woman."
Yeah.
So they go down into the tunnels and the Count follows them down.
And they start with a merry song.
Yes, they've got a little piano accordion thing.
Fucking songs.
Even Hans goes, "Humpy, dumpy, humpy."
Yeah, and then Carla
Just
breaks
met
in
those
with
guys.
a high
When Alec
Everybody's
broke out
singing.
the harmonic, what is it? What's this called? The
harmonica.
No, that harmonica.
Accordion.
Oh, no, accordion. Yeah,
when he
yeah.
breaks that out and says, "Oh, my girlfriend gave me this before we left home," I thought, "Oh, fuck. It's guaranteed to have some more songs."
Yep.
And they're crap songs too, you know, if they were like
Yeah.
It's Pat Boone. His existence there is for songs.
Like the movie's travelling well, there's suspense.
If it was at least like
the
Mary
nemesis has
Poppins.
revealed himself, and then the phrase comes out by the professor. So how about you start us off with a song as they start journeying down into the... And I thought, fuck, what sort of a journey am I now about to watch? Too many songs in the film.
I would have been happy with Chim Chimmery.
There was a bit of chimmery.
All right, so they go down inside, and now so they've got to overcome a whole bunch of things once they're in there. They've got to overcome humans, and they've got to overcome monsters, and they're going to have to overcome the cave. So what's some of the things that stood out, the things that they overcame while they were down in the depths of the earth?
I definitely remember a statement from the good professor who was very sure of certain things. He said, "Drink as much water as you want, because we're guaranteed to run across freshwater springs along our journey. Have you ever heard that in a survival sort of journey scenario, a safari? Drink as much water as you want.
Yes. Turns to the audience. So we won't need to drink water and you don't have to worry about that, okay?
That, incidentally, is actually for a change exactly what happened in the book as well.
Is it?
Because he says, well, obviously there will be water down there. Once we go through this strata and we get to the granite, it's the nature of the rock that it's full of water.
Well, it's one of the perilous things that happens where he takes, he can't help himself and he chips off a bit of crystal in one of the caves.
That's a horrible scene.
Because he has to have it.
Yep.
And then that little tiny thing turns into a cascade of water and a torrent of water, and they get trapped up a blind alley, I think is the thing he calls it. And they have to swim to the top and crawl out of a little hole where one of the
stalactites fell off.
Yep.
Is it stalactite, hold on tight?
Yep.
Stalagmite might poke you in the ass.
I always think
I don't think it was quite, that's how I remembered it.
No,
But
I remember
that's how it was
tits
explained to me.
hang.
Yeah, I always thought
The tits hang
stalactite,
and the mites
hang on tight,
That's how I remember.
stalagmite might poke you in the ass.
Hold on tight, and and might stab you in the ass.
Okay, got that sorted out. They're very good.
Okay.
The professor would be very proud. All right. Have we seen that scene before? Did some other movie? I have this vague recollection where you have the crystal cave that's all perfect, and he just like pink just steals one little tiny crystal, and then everything goes to shit.
Is that in a Conan?
I'm sure that
think
is
I've
in
seen
other
it.
movies where everything's perfect. You don't touch it, you live. But if you touch one thing,
I think it's in Conan the Destroyer.
I've seen that I definitely have seen it in a film before. Yeah.
That's my guess because
Because the thief is always running around stealing jewels out of things.
I know it was in The Mummy, the very first Brendan Fraser mummy movie, where there's a little scarab beetle on the wall.
Yeah.
And he plies it off, and then a
then
million
disaster.
scarab beetles fly out and
devour
people.
It's also
and whatever.
kind of in Raiders of the Lost Ark with the golden thing at the start where he weighs the
yes.
sand and he
Yeah.
swaps it and he's like, cool, got away with it. Then, shit. Everything goes bananas. Speaking of Raiders of the Lost Ark and large spherical things,
Yes.
there's a big boulder in this.
Oh, yeah.
There's a boulder
Underground.
chase. Yes, that's right. You can tell that Spielberg definitely took a lot of lean from this film.
Yeah, so there's a big, gigantic spherical boulder that chases the people.
And when you think about it,
oh my God.
it's a very similar character, right? Where
he is.
he's a university professor that doesn't like to teach. He'd rather be off safari and looking for treasures and things like that.
Yeah.
And when told that you need to get back in the classroom, he tells them all to get stuff. Well, that's very Indiana Jones.
Not only that, the students in this movie all sing the praises
Yeah.
of the professor.
That's right.
Whereas the students in Indiana Jones, that chick has "I love you" written
That's
on
right,
her
on her
eyelids, and she
eyelids.
blinks at him, and he's like, "Oh fuck, what the fuck is that?" So, okay, what else do they have to? Oh, yeah, okay, we got to keep moving. What else do they have to? They have to fight gigantic iguanas. as well.
yes,
That's right. We've got giant lizards, but we've also found an ocean. They've run into an ocean.
And there's a giant ocean down there, and they have to build a raft.
That's right.
They sail across the raft.
What do they build a raft out of, Dan?
They build the raft out of prehistoric, gigantic mushroom logs.
Mushroom tree logs. That's correct.
And again, bloody, I like the first time he sees a mushroom, he heaves in and rips a bit off and
Tries to eat it.
tucks in immediately. Just puts everything in his mouth. And
He does. He's like a toddler. He's got to sample everything with his mouth.
Freud would say it's an oral fixation.
All right, so the iguanas, the gigantic iguanas are a bit of a feature, and they're pretty cool. They're done pretty well in my estimation.
I can tell you at this
they look pretty
stage,
cool.
I can confidently say that lizards were harmed during the making of this
Yes,
film.
I was wondering.
Yeah, we get the spear in it because
Yeah.
that looked real.
No, it was real, and there was one in the mouth as well. But also, there's a shot where the iguanas are eating the iguana.
I thought that was just something that they sort
It
of
was a
prepared.
carcass.
Okay, what I
it was
thought,
an iguana carcass.
What I thought is one person was like holding the iguana and like grabbing its jaw from kind of behind. It was like, what the fuck are you doing? And then it was like shoving the iguana onto another iguana. So I wasn't too worried about
one
that.
or two shots like that, but there were others where they were tearing it, like they were literally ripping it
But
apart.
I was looking at the special effects there and couldn't find anything on how they made it, other than that they glued
Prosthetics.
the prosthetics onto a rhinoceros iguana.
And-
I was wondering if they might have been hand puppets. It's really, really
well,
excellently
they
done. hand
may have
puppets.
been real rhinoceros.
that's what I was kind of
They've
saying.
taken a lot of the insides out, and the hand it was
maybe.
shoving the hand inside.
I was thinking that they didn't have to be dead. And they could be still hand puppets. They're not dead. It's just somebody's holding it. And,
Could be.
and sort of waving
Because
it around.
the sail prop was so well made color wise. I would assume that they the craftsmanship.
Well, I
was
think they
pretty
sprayed
much
the whole
there.
lizard to match the color. I
Maybe
think if you look at it,
Maybe that.
Yeah, it's probably.
if you look at it, they sprayed the whole lizard, and there's a glisten to it, like you can sort of tell. But there's another lizard that does not fare well in this film, that gets covered with, I don't know what that red lava
Oatmeal.
mush
It's
is.
red,
Oatmeal, is it?
Red oatmeal.
It didn't look like it. It's because they spray painted it red as well, the lizard, because it's supposed to glow, and it's a
I don't know.
lava
Iguanas,
lizard.
they swim, don't they? So
Yes.
Iguanas do, yeah.
I don't know if they. I don't know how they feel about swimming in oatmeal that's made to look like lava, but
Yeah.
But
anyway.
another thing of the professor is when they walk into the ocean, when they see that they're supposed to be dimetrodons, and so when they see that, and Saknussemm says, "Can they swim?" And the professor goes, "No, they cannot. Let's go in the ocean."
yeah,
No, they cannot swim.
he's the professor.
He knows everything.
That's right.
All right, so they have a bit of that. They have a bit of that for a little while, and then they escape, and then we've got to go into the resolution, Act 3. So they've got to get out and be alive. So they finally reach the center of the world,
Yes,
and they can tell because magnetic things go crazy, and
because they're gold.
they have a
The
gold.
the magnetic fields pull out the gold out of the mouth, and gold rings and
And
everything.
and most importantly, what's the most important thing?
oh, the bloody instrument gets. Are you
The
glad?
journal.
The journal.
Like the journal.
the evidence. That's
'cause
right.
It might have
Yeah.
had binders.
Well, they get
binder rings
shipwrecked
or something.
They get shipwrecked.
But the journal
Everything gets-
disappears. Like when everything, the tooth out of Hans's mouth and everything. But the journal goes, and that's why the professor later on says, "You cannot credit me with any discovery at all because I can't prove it."
They go
If he had
into
had
a,
the journal, he would have been able to prove it.
we don't really know how they get saved, right? It's because they end up being in a maelstrom, right,
And
going
then
around in
and then
circles and
next thing
circles,
you're on the beach.
and then suddenly there's the whole raft and everything is gone, and they're just half naked on the beach.
Yep.
So we don't know what how
Whether
they
they
got
go
out of there.
down in it and then come out
But the
an
fact
opposite
is,
one.
They realize they're at the center of the Earth because it suddenly all makes sense that the North Pole and the South Magnetic Pole would, I don't know, wouldn't they cancel each other out?
Yeah, I don't. It was the science was dubious.
Yes,
Science
we were getting a
has
little
to
out
be.
of our bounds of scientific knowledge in there. But it turns out that Atlantis is down there at the bottom of the world
Absolutely,
underneath the volcano for some reason.
Absolutely.
So they prance around there for a little while, but they also find a tube that goes all the way back up to the top.
A wind tube.
Volcanic
Yes,
chimney, they call
that's
it.
right.
And they find a wonderful gigantic bowl made of pure asbestos.
That's right. Luckily, the heathen stone.
They lost everything, and what they find is gunpowder, flintstone, and an asbestos bowl.
What and how they found
This
it
is bad.
seemed very, very
Bad
convenient,
writing.
didn't it?
Very
All
bad.
in about 40 seconds.
Like-
We found everything we need.
and he goes off and he's pondering, and then he has a brain
we
fart.
just take these three things that we just found and put them together and get out of here.
So even their escape is a little bit. How did they escape? Well, they.
Yeah.
So there was some gunpowder and then they escaped.
There's a lot of crossfades going
So
on
there's some
with,
sort of-
with the escape. Was like time is
There's a
passing.
volcanic-
All of a sudden, there's people swimming in the water.
There's a volcanic explosion.
Hang on.
and-
You haven't gotten rid of the superfluous scientist yet.
Oh yes, we forgot that. Yeah. So we've got the bad scientists who keep walking
Oh, that's
around.
right.
Well,
He takes out one of the team first, and then
he
then
he
a rock
shoots
falls on him.
Alec. He shoots Alec in the
Well,
arm.
that's
ages ago.
way
That's
way
ages
before.
ago. We
When Alec
shipwrecked.
gets lost,
We're now shipwrecked.
Okay.
he
Yep.
runs into the Saknussemm
Okay. Well,
count.
Yep. And then when they come back on the raft, poor old Gertrude
That's right.
wanders
Meets
off
her
alone.
demise.
Yeah, walks backwards into the forest, and out of the forest comes Count
With the-
Count
and actually
Nutsack.
says the phrase, "Here, duck."
Yeah, pretty duck.
He must have eaten her raw because it went so far.
Yes, I
Picking
think,
There's
I
no
think
time.
I think he has. Yes, he's gone raw. And Hans loses his shit
Yes.
and goes after the.
And
proceeds to try to strangle him.
In
And
pure, beautiful 1955 combat style.
Yes, yes.
Chooses to strangle.
very. That's right.
Yes.
And then Suck Newsom backs up, trips over a rock,
Well-
and then gets squashed by a boulder,
Squashed by a boulder. Yeah.
which is known as his comeuppance. Like every one of these Journey to the Centre of the Earth, the Fantastic Journey, there's always someone in the show who's a conniving little turd that
Yes.
gets their comeuppance.
It's very true.
By the end of the film. And it's the way that those people tend to die is always very entertaining.
One of the cool things that we missed that we perhaps should, I don't want to go for too long, but they had a court case
That's
down
right.
there when
When he shot Alex.
Yeah. So the court case. So this is our bad scientist. So James Mason says we should have a court case and try this guy. So the court case is who votes he's guilty. And everybody goes, I do.
They all do.
I do.
And without missing a beat, he says, okay, now tell that guy that he's to wait 10 minutes.
Cap him in the noggin with this gun. We'll be all over
But he had
here.
to wait 10 minutes, which is enough time for my guilt to walk away. And Hart says, fuck you.
Yeah, Hard's not going to do it. So he then tries to get Alex to do
And then
it.
he tries to get the widow to do
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
She
yeah.
says, I'm a chick.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, you've shoved that down our throat. It's a lovely little scene, that whole thing.
Yes.
And by the end of it, they were trying to save him from Hans.
So, but that's because they're noble people. All right. And so anyway, they go back to Edinburgh and there's more singing.
Yes.
Alec marries Jenny.
That's right.
Something very strange happens. In fact, inexplicably bizarre happens is that once they get back to Edinburgh, Jenny, who's Alex's girlfriend,
Squeeze.
brings him in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
It's got a leg in a cast and an arm in a sling.
Yeah.
And he fell down the stairs while they were getting married.
That's right.
Yep.
And is now in a...
Yes.
Why on earth did they put that in the movie?
My theory is so that we could hear the woman and her Scottish accent that is asking about, did this happen
What
on
does
your
that
journey?
woman say? What does that woman say?
I think she says something like, did this happen on your
Oh,
perilous...
he's not going to be
perilous-
much of a husband now.
Yeah.
That's
She's hinting
right.
about the wedding night. She's
Yes.
like, oh, well, you're
And
not
then
going to have much of a wedding night.
How does Jenny reply?
Oh, he's very
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Don't worry, he managed. It was fine.
He looked after business.
He took care of business.
So
Well, why is the scene in there, Dan? Because they go through this perilous journey. They get bloody thrown out of a volcano. He lands in a tree without his undies. And they don't take any damage.
So-
So it's funny that at the end he's
Okay,
suddenly
so
in
that
a
was
cast.
the bit.
Yeah, the
it's
bit that he survives
the
all that
irony
with hardly a
and
scratch.
he
And
fell
then
down the stairs afterwards.
Yeah.
it's funny, 1959.
what I found interesting is the proclamation to the whole student body that really the whole thing was for nothing. That I can't prove any of it, and I would never bring the good name of the institute into disrepute by suggesting that you have to take my word for it. Now, if I had wrote down on a piece of paper that I'd done all these things, then we'd be fine.
Well, he does write his
Just go
memoir.
over there and write it. Which I think within the next 40 seconds, he proceeds to suggest that that's exactly what he's going to do is write.
Because what evidence did he bring anyway? He took a little bit of a crystal from a wall.
Yeah.
Well, they bring some rock with. I mean, there's no evidence that they can bring, is there?
That's that science thing, isn't it? Like you can go into the jungle and discover something. If you write it down, then it's a thing. It is that thing. But if you don't, then it's...
Well, you got to bring.
Tuesday.
Usually you bring specimens back or anything. If you brought back a dead lizard, then they might have had something.
Yeah.
All right, and then the last part of the victory celebrations is
Snog.
a bit of a pash.
Yeah.
Between multiple.
Yeah.
Multiple.
Doesn't James Mason decide to propose? Well, he's told to propose.
Pretty much. He's
No,
backed into a corner.
Yeah, he's a bit of a doofus about it, and he doesn't
she
quite
puts
know.
the hard word on him.
And she makes it all work, and they have a bit of a pash behind an umbrella.
So it's happy ending for all,
ending.
except for Gertrude and the Count.
Poor old Gertrude. Why was Gertrude even in the movie? Why did they kill Gertrude? Why did they kill Gertrude?
Yeah, Gertrude really didn't need to die.
I mean,
You're right.
they could have had much more fun with Gertrude doing hijinks and messing
If
up
you-
the plans
if
of
you back
Captain
it up-
Nutsack and...
If you back up Nutsack's death, to have him die that way, they have to have a reason for him to stumble backwards and everything, which is puts you with Hans, and then Hans is only got his hands around his throat because of Gertrude. It's the only way that Gertrude's death makes any sense is if you come backwards from Sucknussen's death.
And perhaps it's to give a more recent reason why, if he just died then, doing in an argument, it wouldn't be justified.
I think one of the lizards should have
Yeah.
Yeah, he could,
Killed
he
him
was
on
such
the
an arrogant prick. He could have done something.
He should
Yeah,
have
he
died on
could
the
have been
beach
like,
with the lizard.
Screw you guys, I'm out of here. And then run straight
Chomp.
into a lizard. Yes, exactly.
Exactly.
Anyway, okay, I'd like to end. I've got two more things to end with, and that's comments. Mm-hmm. So I went and found a couple of cool comments. So I've got two comments here from people who watched the movie and had very strong opinions about them. So the first one is somebody who didn't like the movie. They essentially gave it 1 star. Mm-hmm. So this is Victor I. Probably spelling is not his first language. So I'll just read it out. So Victor I, rotten emoji. It is disappointing, pointless, with an awful cast of miscast actors, starting with the only person who carries all the film, James Mason. The story was terribly violated with severe distortions. The FX was a shame. Using a snake instead of an extincted creature, that's ridiculous. Confused emoji. Why? James Mason is a good actor and he only gets 2 points in the film. But the truth is he is miscasted. If I directed the film now, I would Kevin Kline as Lindenbrock. The script doesn't respect Jules Verne, and this is an insult. The romance between Galbin and Axel is very Hollywood-esque. The music is a piece of trash. Don't you see this awful movie? One of the worst disappointments in my cinematic life.
Wow.
I feel sorry for the poor guy, actually.
Wow. That's insane.
With Kevin Kline.
He's got a hard on for Kevin Kline, absolutely. When was that written? Do we have a date?
Must have been in the late 80s. Early 90s.
Kevin Kline's done nothing for 15 years, 20 years at least.
All right, that's Victor.
Wow.
Victor I. Thanks for Victor. I've got one more, and this was somebody who was a bit more impressed with the movie. I've slightly edited this just for a little bit of clarity. I've only added a couple of words. And this is Ian H. At the end, after the characters blow themselves out of the center of the earth through a volcano, Pat Boone, having his clothes ripped off, lands in a tree. He then falls out of said tree in front of a bunch of nuns. To cover his parts, he picks up a nearby sheep and holds it over his junk. For me, this is probably one of my top 5 moments in cinema history. No lie.
I can get on board with that.
Yep. The fact that the naked guy grabs a sheep and disappears into the bushes with it.
We completely forget the fact that he's been blown out of a volcano.
You imagine the ark. He's like in a little village. This is nowhere near the volcano.
Yeah. And his first thought is, I can't show these nuns my junk.
You can imagine the pitch meeting for this.
Yep.
Guys, I've got a great idea for this movie.
And if you show just that shot where he's backing away with the sheep, going behind, and he says, "Excuse me, ladies, excuse me," and get someone to tell me what this movie is about based on this here, just this one shot.
Yeah.
Imagine what people would come up with. Imagine the type of film they think it is.
It's a New Zealand rom-com.
Yeah.
So, sorry, Kiwis.
All right, gentlemen, that brings us to the end of What the Plot for another episode. That's it for our episode 1 of our 3-episode journey into this film. Join us next time when we take a look at some trivia and a little bit of a peek behind the curtain for the writing and how the narration was created and some interesting stuff involved with that as well. So until next time, it's bye from me.
See ya.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Ciao.
escape? How many of you are there?